Okay. Hey, Rihanna, this is your teacher again. And Vicky, if you're not watching this, I need you to just watch at least the beginning of this. We're going to kind of reroute some things. I want Rihanna to stop working in Compass for math and reading. Unless she may be already done with one or both of those. But if she's not, I want her to go ahead and stop working in Compass in math and reading. If she's doing science or any kind of social studies, she can keep doing that in Compass. But for math and reading, I want her to start working in this program. This is Study Island. And it's at studyisland.com, and it'll take her to a login screen, and she'll want to use the login that says it's for schools. And once you've clicked the login for schools, it'll bring you right to this screen right here. Your username and your password are going to be the exact same as you use in Compass. And so once you've put those in, you'll just click sign in, and I'm signing in as you so you can see how it goes, and then it'll pop this screen up right here. Now I know Greg Pierce, that's the name you know, okay? But I want you to always select, these are your three classes that are loaded for you, and I only want you to work in the one that says Juan Pierce, Greg, this one right here. So you're going to click on that, and when you do, it will open up and you will see that you have second grade math and second grade reading. And there's only 18 lessons in math and 39 lessons in reading. So I just want you to get through as many as you can. If you want to just do one a day in each of these, you're going to be doing just fine. And you won't do them in Compass. Again, you will just do math and reading here. And I'm okay if you just do one lesson a day as long as you get a passing score. Okay, so the way that you do this is, let's say you want to start with math, which is what I'm going to cover today. You will click on math, and if you look here, you can see all 18 things that they want you to learn. Study Island only has lessons for the things that Oklahoma says you need to have learned by the time you get to be done as a second grader. And so this is all of the stuff that you need to learn. I'm going to start up here and just kind of ignore the fact that this says foundations for fractions right here, okay? I'm going to start up here and I'm logged in as you. And this is what we're going to do a lesson on today. So what you would do is, if you were ready to tackle this first one, is you would start out by clicking the word lesson. And I'll move this where you can see it. This would pop up, and you would have just a little quick little lesson. Most of the time they'll have pictures and stuff, and other times when you get done, you can even click there and you can play a movie. A lot of times they'll have movies there with you. So you're going to go through this lesson. You can go through each page. You're going to look at it. If you feel like writing something down, you go for it. Otherwise, you can always just kind of minimize this to the bottom of the screen. And so if you have trouble remembering something, it'll always be down there at the bottom of the screen. So let's say that you got on and you've already gone through the lesson. You feel like you understand what's going on. Well, then you're going to click the actual name of the lesson, represent whole numbers. So we're going to start there. And it'll pop up this screen. And you're always going to try to change the number of questions to as close to 20 as you can. Okay? And then you're going to hit next. And then you'll see, and we haven't gone over this yet, so I'm not going to make you do this just yet, but you'll see you'll have the question there, and you can go through it. You'll select the right one. If you get it right, you get a star. If you get it wrong, you get a big red X, but don't worry, because there's always an explanation here as to why the right answer is right and the wrong answer is wrong. So Vicky, if you're going through this with her, this would be if you were ever wondering why something was right or wrong. Always click the explanation after she's done with it, and you'll see it. So we're going to end because we haven't gone through it yet, and that's what I'm about to go through. So yes, we want to exit that, and then it's going to take us to this screen. And here is where you can figure out how she did on that particular session. It'll give you a percentage correct. If you can get a 75% or higher, then you're going to earn what's called a blue ribbon. This down here will tally up all of the attempts that you have made, and it'll give you an average. But really, my main concern right here is this session result, not what's called this cumulative statistics. Blah. Okay, so we're going to return to the main. And as you can see, we got 100% so far. We're doing good. A doesn't actually stand for a letter grade, it stands for advanced. So that's how I want you to work your way through this. So I want you to maybe do one day, and then the next day you'll do number 2, the next day you'll do number 3, and once you get a 75%, I will consider that one done. And when you're done with all 18, you are done with second grade math for the whole year. okay? And that'll go the same for reading. There's a few more lessons in reading. As you can see, there's 39 in reading, but I still think that that's a pretty small number. If you just do one each day, you're going to finish on time, actually probably a little bit early. So that's what I want you to do. Now let's get to the actual lesson for today. So even though you may know this already, we're going to talk about whole numbers and place value. Now whole numbers are numbers that are whole, like 1. Well, that's an entire number. That is a whole number. Whenever you start seeing funky things like fractions, so I've written here a whole number is a number that isn't a fraction, and you might be like, well, what's a fraction? Well, look at that number right there. If you see a number like that has that funky little line in the middle of it, and sometimes they make it nice and even, they might make it look like that, or they might use different numbers. It might be like 3 over 4 or 8 over 20 or either way, I don't care. You're not going to have to mess with it, okay? Because that is not a whole number. It's only part of a number. It's not a whole number. So anytime you see that line, it is not a whole number, okay? If you don't see that line and you just see the number 8 or the number 10 or the number 476, well, there's no little funky lines there. So that number, all of those numbers are whole numbers, okay? Now, when you have a whole number like this one right here, I've written 247. Each of those numbers has what's called a place, okay? Now, each of these numbers represents a certain amount of something. In this first little area right here, where I have that 7, it's all the way to the right-hand side, okay? I have that 7. That is my ones row. Okay, I'm gonna separate it out. It's got its own little column. It's the ones column. This second one tells me how many tens I have in this whole number. And right here I can see, well, I have 4 tens in this whole number. So I'm gonna separate that, give it its own little room too, if I can draw a line. And that is the tens room. And this number all the way over here to the left, that has its own little house also, and it is the hundreds. It tells me how many hundreds are in this number. So I have this number right here, and I can see that it has 2 hundreds in it, it has 4 tens in it, and it has 7 ones in it. So if I was to read that whole number all the way out, I would say it had 247. So my number here is 247. That's one way to look at a whole number. If I wanted to write that number out, like in words, and actually use my pencil and put it to the page and actually write it out, if I wanted to write out 247, I would write it just like this. 200, those words together say 200, and then 47, and I've added that little thing right there, and that's called a hyphen or a dash. In numbers, it's generally, you can kind of go either way, hyphen or dash, okay? But you got to write it like that. So if I were to write 247 out, that's exactly how I would write it in actual words, 247. Well, here's some other ways that we can look at the number 247, and you're going to see all of them on your first lesson in Study Island. Sometimes they use blocks. Now, I didn't take the time to make sure that each and every line that's supposed to be in this funky little block was there, okay? So you're just going to have to kind of look at it and imagine that I wrote it correctly, but you're going to know what the block is when you see it, okay? So if you ever get onto Study Island and you look at this and you get all these big blocks, each one of these big blocks is going to count as 100. So if I see one of these blocks, I know I've got 100 something. If I see 2 of these blocks, I know I've got 200 something, okay? So big blocks, they're worth 100. What about tall, skinny blocks? Well, those count for a different amount. Each of those, they're not as big as the big block. They only count as 10. So every time I see a skinny block, I'm going to only count it as 10. It only gets 10. I can get smaller though. Sometimes you just have one little square. And each square, that's just 1. You may have seen those, okay? Just 1. So if I'm going to go back and take my number 247 and break it up and make it look like a bunch of blocks, well, remember, each of my big blocks counts for 100. So here I have 100, and here I have another 100. So I have 200. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tens. So that's 40. So I'm going to put 4 in my 10 spot. And how many of these do I have? Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in my ones column, I've got 7. So sometimes they'll show the whole number like that, 247. There's even one other way that they can represent a whole number, show you a whole number. It's called tally marks. And we use these a lot when we're trying to count things. But basically, tally marks work. Every time you want to count one, you're going to give it a little scritch, little line. And if you're going to count another one, well, I'm going to count that too. Okay? So let's assume that we have a whole bunch of chickens. And I tell you, Rihanna, go back out there and count how many chickens. Well, you may have a lot of chickens, okay? So you're going to start counting them up. You're going to go, oh, there's a chicken, and there's a chicken, and there's a chicken. And every time you see a chicken, you're going to write down a little scritch mark like that. Well, every time you get to the 4th chicken, that 5th chicken that you count, it goes like that. So now I look at that, and I know that every time I see one that's got a funky line through it like that, that counts as 5. Every time I see just a line, well, each of those lines just counts as 1. So there's 1, 2 of those, so that would just be 2. And if I was to add them all together, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to equal 7 altogether. Okay? And going back to here, I'm looking at this. Sometimes I'm going to show it to you in a little diagram like this where they've listed hundreds and tens and ones. Okay? And this is saying, well, I remember whenever you see that one with the line through it, that counts for 5. And then I got 3 more here. So I've got 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if I was going to ask you how many hundreds were there, you could say, well, there's 8 hundreds, Greg. What about your tens? Well, let's count them. We got 1, 2 tens. So we're just going to write 2 in our tens. What about my ones? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 ones. And now I have this number. If I'll just look at this number, and I was to put all of those numbers together, I would have 8, 2, 4, and I could say I have 824. That is my whole number. Okay? So, how does that help us with our lesson? I will get you started on this lesson. Let's say we're going to start this 2nd grade math. I think we got down whole numbers. I understand those. I'm going to leave that as 10 for right now. Well, let's look at this. Sometimes they're going to go, hey, which of the following is equal to the number below? And they have the number 19. Okay? Well, the number 19 has 1 10 in it, and it has 9 ones in it. So if I know my place value, well, this one shows that it's 1 in the tens and 9 in the ones. So I'm going to select that, and that's the right answer. Other times, they're not going to have a word. They're going to have the actual number. And this number, well, I know this place is my 7, or is my tens place, so I have 7 tens and 3 ones. So if I have 7 tens, I have 70, and then 3 more than that would be 73. Here I have the words again. I just have to sound it out. 53. So I know I have a 5 in my tens column and a 3 in my ones column. Well, this one has a 5 in my tens and a 3 in my ones, so I'm going to get that one. Here we have the scritch marks again. So this is telling me in my tens place, I've got a 5 because I have that line. And in my ones place, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to have a 5 and a 4. Here, that one matches. Do one more. I've got, oh my goodness, I have 6 of these. They each count for 100. So I have 600. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 91. 691. Now I want you to give it a shot and see if you can finish the rest.